making sure that there's nuance into, there's a whole lot of conversations that we've had over a period of time, whether it's with executives or board members or that you really want to make sure that you've got that sort of anchored into this is why, because that's the opportunity for us to be able to influence and drive some of those outcomes. It's the lived experience that we've had.
Welcome back to Cyber Voices, the official podcast of the Australian Information Security Association, but you probably know us as AISA. I'm your host, as always, David Savva-Willett, and it is my pleasure to bring you the diverse voices of the Australian cyber community. Today's episode is a bit of a personal one for me. My guest is Graham Fairley, Chief Information Security Officer of Property Exchange Australia, but more popularly known as PEXA. And before I tell you about Graham, I should be transparent about something. Graham is someone I have worked with before, with myself having previously held the CISO role at PEXA. But he's also not just a former colleague, he's also a friend. We've known each other for over 6 or 7 years now. I held this role previously before Graham, and I've watched him grow into this role and build something genuinely impressive, something that, I'll be honest, probably surpasses anything I achieved in my time there, and I'm being very humble. And I just couldn't be more proud of what he's doing. So who is Graham? He's a cybersecurity leader with more than 20 years of experience, but what makes his story particularly compelling is that he didn't arrive at PEXA as CISO, obviously. He grew into the role from within, progressing through positions in identity and access management, security consulting, and ultimately up to a security services lead before stepping into the job in late 2024. This is a rare and genuinely earned path to the CISO chair. And the organisation he now protects is unlike almost any other that we know of in Australia. PEXA is the digital backbone of Australia's property settlement, the platform that processes the exchange of property between buyers and sellers across the entire country. When you buy a home in Australia, there is a very good chance that PEXA is the system that makes it happen. The security implications of that, for those who listen to this podcast often and are in this industry, are extraordinary. Before we get into it, if you are watching on YouTube, please take a moment to hit the like button. It genuinely helps more people find this show. And if you are listening on your podcast platform of choice, please give us a 5-star rating. If you are enjoying the show, it goes a long way and takes you only about 5 seconds. Graham, welcome finally to Cyber Voices.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to join you today. It's been a long time coming.
It has been a long time coming. And I think the right amount of time has passed to actually sit down and talk with you on the record about how it's been going in your first gig as CISO. I recently had Tara, who worked with both of us at PEXA here as well. People at home are probably thinking, wow, this is becoming the People Dave has worked with podcast. But no, it's genuinely interesting to sit down with leaders like yourself who I've worked with in the past and seen your leadership journey grow. I do find your career path and the journey that you've been on just genuinely fascinating and impressive. And it warrants sharing, to be quite honest. It's the path nobody talks about. Like, the CISO role has always been this enigma to a lot of people. And I think there is no one single description for a CISO and what makes a CISO, right? And your path into it really kind of breaks the mold, I think, of where a lot of people are in. So, most people will probably come into a CISO role from the outside. I know as I've moved on to new opportunities, generally people are they've created their first CISO gig or their CISO's left, and they're looking to bring in that new external hire who's going to bring in a different way of thinking. But you've been at PEXA since 2019, and as I said at the beginning, working through the ranks before your permanent appointment. So that's 5 years. Was it 5, 6 years? 5 or 6 years of earning it from the inside, right? Yeah. What do you feel that path gave you in terms of an edge over what perhaps an external hire might have brought?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of items in there. I think there's the context and knowledge of how the business operates. There's definitely the relationships that you build up over time, by doing multiple roles and working with a wide, part of the business in various functions in security and technology and through acquisitions and those sort of things. And it's, also, it's been the opportunity to actually, through succession planning and, good operational sort of things, being able to get exposed to, various stakeholders in the business, from the executives to the board members, that I think ultimately culminated in, arriving in that role. And I think there's a real credit to yourself around putting that really good planning in place, but also exposing.
You don't have to say that, it's fine.
but also exposing both, Tara, myself, and the wider team to, various functions within the business, because there's always the option to gatekeep those relationships and those sort of things. But I think being, genuinely sharing them, the opportunities to, to go and talk with the board and get comfortable, bring different perspectives in, because I think that was a really big part of it is, you've got your view, but you also brought us in around, what are our diverse set of opinions and how do we actually arrive at that? Because I think we've all got different strengths and that we bring to, the conversations. And I mean, security is a large part around those conversations and experiences. How do you bring them together and apply them to, the business problems as they exist today?
Everyone brings their own unique flavour and skill and expertise. I know you and I working together, like you came from more of a technical background than I did, but we were always able to, you probably taught me a lot more technically and I was able to impart some more of the like business and soft skills
100%,
knowledge on you, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's always, it's that continual learning and how do we leverage off the, the advantages and structure that, that different people bring. Like we both know we've got a few people on the team that are very, process oriented and I definitely lean on that because I think that's a skill that, I think I need to get, improve, or continually improve around. But I think it's that, bringing everyone together and understanding, what are those strengths that, different people can play and how do you sort of package up some of the roles and projects and operational elements to really leverage that off so that we're greater than the sum of our parts.
Let's wind back the clock a little bit. You got the role, and congratulations. It's been a good 18 months now. You were telling me before we hit the record button, like, I think I'm finally kind of getting what this gig's all about now. And you know what? I mean, I've been doing it for over 6 years, and I think I'm still kind of getting it. Take me back to, those first early days and weeks and months. I know you and I exchanged some texts and emails about how you were going. But when you made that pivot from really stepping into the chair, you acted in the role a few times. But then when it was totally you and there was the actual permanent CISO is not coming back because I am him.
There was no more parachute.
What was that like? What were some of the early learning curves that you had there?
Oh, look, because I think we rolled straight into, some really big chunky pieces of work that we had in flight, but it was different being in the hot seat to just providing that, advisory, you take it or take the advice or leave it, the decisions with you. And, some of the pressure that came with that and, dealing with, our CEO and CTO at the time around trying to, do a large, outsourcing agreement and those sort of things and being able to articulate, the pros and cons and benefits that those sort of things bring. So, it was definitely straight into the hot seat. So I guess, straight away, getting that, executive influence and buy-in, working in with the board around, what are the real benefits and those sort of things. I think that was some of the early learnings and, I probably didn't get it perfect, first time round. We definitely got pushed and those sort of things. But the other one is, really around, the accountability that really comes with, the whole security of the platform and being able to articulate, have we got this? And getting that level of comfort and sort of sitting with that was probably the other element of, it brings a different set of pressure with it around, because everyone's always asking, that, whether it's, executives see some stuff in the press and asking those questions around what does this mean for us and what does this mean for us and trying to strike that tone of we've got this, But there's also a little bit of, there might be a little bit of smoke here that, do we need to actually think about this? And, working with partners and that around, and having those sounding boards that you can really sort of bounce a few of those ideas off is probably been, some of my early learnings around, because you can't do it all by yourself. So being able to talk to people and bounce ideas around, whether it's in our team or in the wider, sort of community, and, partners and peers and that, around to just spitball ideas around, how are you thinking about this? And that is definitely, getting that sort of humming along and building those relationships as well. Early on in the piece, I had lucky enough to have some opportunities to go to some, like Cyber Shield and talk, around, cybersecurity and how we're going to think about this at the national level and those sort of things. And to your point, exactly, being able to talk about, what are your pains, and actually we're doing this, and actually we're doing quite well in this area, but what about this, some of those sort of things. So, and get that baseline of what's working well, but also what are some of the opportunities, and put it into some of the context of the wider industry as well. I found really useful in that sort of things.
What is one skill that you think has really sharpened in your 18 months as a CISO?
I mean, definitely, probably, I guess, some of the writing and that sort of things. I know it was always a passion of yours, but it's definitely something that I've had to work at. I don't think my English teachers back at school would probably have said that, it's my best subject, being a technology and a tech sort of person. So definitely that, how to actually, do papers and be able to influence and presentations and those sort of things is definitely, that's been a learning curve, and working with, people around, sound checking, and those sort of things has definitely been a big one. And then probably the other big one is, really getting sharp around, those risk elements and understanding not necessarily the fundamentals, but how to actually bring it to life and really be able to, get that depth of knowledge in and around that risk, and how you actually communicate that, once again, in a balanced manner. The sky isn't falling, but, there's some elements here that we actually need to invest on, and how to prioritise and those sort of things. So being able to bring that risk view of the world to life from a cybersecurity perspective has been, probably some of the other big learnings.
Sounds like you've become a better storyteller. That's what everyone says about CISOs, is we need to be storytellers. Very much. I like that. It's a great way of describing. Exactly. Bringing it to life, in a meaningful way, and sure. I feel like we can't really lean on AI to write our papers for us and all that kind of. I mean, we can certainly get some help with the draft, but we still need to be the ones that actually bring the story behind what's on that paper to life, right? Because you go in, you talk to that board, that one page is there in front of them, but the richness comes out in the way that you as the CISO bring that to life for them in that, sometimes 5-10 minutes that you've got to help them understand where their risk is and what actions you are recommending be taken. Yeah, very much so. Because I think it's also about, bringing your voice through, and, my style is very, is different to your style, because you want to be authentic there around that as well. So yeah, definitely the AI is really useful in the drafting and the ideation phase and those sort of things, but making sure that there's nuance into, there's a whole lot of conversations that we've had over a period of time, whether it's with executives or board members or that you really want to make sure that you've got that sort of anchored into this is why, because that's the opportunity for us to be able to influence and drive some of those outcomes. It's the lived experience that we've had, whether it's conversations with board members or directors around some of these sort of things. How have you found leaving the technical stuff behind? Because I remember bringing you on board at PEXA to do identity and access management and work on Okta and all that kind of stuff. And, you were always, and still are, such a rare convergence of both people skills and technical skills. But you were always very, very happy when you were working on a technical problem. How have you found having to let some of that go?
I'd say definitely in the early days, that was probably my safe space where you could go back to, I'll just do a bit of tech stuff because I know, I know what I'm doing in that that space. And, the team definitely called me out on, a few of those sort of things. It's like, should you really be doing this? Is this the best use of your time? So, some of it I've had to go cold turkey on, which is fun.
It's a lot of trust that you have to give up.
That's right. Yeah, very much so. You build that trust in people, and we've put in, various team members and functions. And I've always been a big one around, there's multiple ways to solve problems. My way isn't the only way. So, getting trust and comfort with teams is something, I've learned to, to deal with. Yeah, it was definitely an evolution over time. We finally got to the point where we were taking my access away deliberately, very deliberately, to say, okay, that just sort of stops some of the temptation. It's as much for the team as it is for me as well, because you become a bit of a crutch for, we'll just ask the question around how do I solve this.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were always the go-to guy.
Well,
you were the go-to. We had a big team there, and even outside of our team, you would sit next to each other when we were in the office on the same days, and it was always a constant stream of people from all over the office coming up going, Graham, what do you think about this? What do you have to do that? Have you had to sort of try and deflect them, or do you still try to help them with this stuff? I still try.
I think it's in my nature. I don't think I'm going to change that.
And you're really good at that.
I like working in with people. Now it's around prioritization and those sort of things. And it's like, the first thing I start asking myself is, do I really need to solve it right now for this person? So, or can I, politely, work with, some of our, other team members and that sort of things. And, that really, the first time it's like, makes you feel uncomfortable, but definitely, starting to, go down that path. Because once again, it's also giving people the space to build their brand and get that recognition of, because it's also the perception of not everything needs to go through me. I don't want the perception to be, I'm the only one who can solve anything and it all falls apart if I'm not here.
I feel like the CISO isn't really kind of the hero, right? I think once upon a time, and, I remember reporting to CISOs, a long time ago, and they were often the ones wanting to be the hero. Yeah. And it's not the case anymore. I think there's that leadership, or that special source of the leadership where you are there to provide the space for others to truly shine. There's a switch, I think, that flicks eventually where you're like, this is what I do now.
Yeah, this is the value that I bring. Yeah, exactly, around being able to get it out of everyone's heads and out of, and bring it all together and tell that, once again, back to that story, tell the, what is our cyber strategy and how do we bolt all these diverse parts of operations and engineering and governance and partnering. How do we actually tell a consistent, coherent story that lets everyone know that we think we've got this. These are the areas that we think we need, investment and capacity or, growth or, improvements in. But this is the why, and this is the why we're sequencing it. So I've really started to enjoy that part of bringing it all together. It's getting that coherence, consistency is really, I've really started to enjoy that side of bringing it all together.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the interview. I know you're loving it, but a quick word before I let you get back to it. I just want to let you know that every year, AISA's events bring together the people shaping cybersecurity across Australia, the practitioners, leaders, and decision makers your organisation wants to be in front of. We offer a range of exhibition and branding opportunities to reach them across our Sec Day conferences nationwide, and of course at CyberCon, our flagship event held each October. CyberCon is one of the country's largest cybersecurity gatherings,
bringing together over 5,000 attendees, 400 expert speakers, and 150 exhibitors all under the one roof, making it the premier platform to showcase your organisation and connect with industry leaders. To explore a partnership, get in touch with our national events and sponsorship manager, Susanna Palermo, at sponsorship@aisa.org.au. And if you would like to reach this same audience every week, sponsorship opportunities for the podcast you're listening to are also available. Anyway, let's get back on with the show.
Let's pivot now into what it is you are actually responsible for, which is protecting a major critical infrastructure asset to Australia. So, PEXA as a platform is listed as a critical infrastructure asset, which tells you everything about how seriously government and regulators, take its role within the property ecosystem. Property is a $10 trillion asset class, so the biggest asset class in Australia. And yet there are a lot of Australians who are probably unsure what PEXA is. I know my husband's parents were selling their house, and he came to me with the conveyancer's invoice, and he said, what is this? Why is PEXA on the invoice, right?
Yeah.
And, PEXA's published a lot of stats recently, saying that, and these are stuff that I'm familiar with. You've blocked somewhere in the order of 6.5 million intrusion attempts in a single financial year, 4 times the volume of previous years. So it's intrusion attempts against the platform and against your business. I can remember, and that's grown from my time there. The threat has gotten bigger. I kind of know what this is like, but, Graham, for yourself, what's it like to sit with that number?
Yeah, like there's a lot going on out there, and I think, working, within the industry, I think we're not alone. I think, nationally, as a nation, we're seeing this. We're a rich target, as a country. And, for us as our platform, that we do broker a lot of those, those high value transactions and those sort of things. So, that number definitely sits with us around, how do we actually need to be thinking about this? So we bring it back to the fundamentals, like how do we actually have, our layered controls around, not just relying on, a crispy outer shell or those sort of things. It's but how do we actually build out, and we do build out, lots of layered controls and those sort of things. And then how do we continually measure those? And then how do we get really good threat intelligence around what's going on in the wider market and play that in so that we can drive down our speed to detect and those sort of things. So we get that through working with really good partners around that. And, understanding and, once again, back to that sort of peer of network around, what are other people observing in the industry there. But we can never rest on our laurels. It's always, what's next? What's next? How do we keep, tightening up, improving our controls, whether it's, replacing a tool, with a better one, or getting more intelligence, linking it in. And that's really where we've been able to, drive around our SOC experience and get that, correlation of threat intelligence with our logging and SIEM stuff.
And you've got the consumer side as well, which is when the target is a person buying or selling a home, not the PEXA platform itself. You mentioned your white paper recently, which I did do a little bit of reading of, which was Safeguarding Your Property Settlement, which was published through PEXA last year in August. You wrote that criminals don't need to compromise systems, they just need to compromise trust. That line really stands out. It does reframe the threat completely. Your platform can be technically impenetrable, sure, but someone still loses their deposit through a fake email, which you have no control over apart from, education and awareness. How do you carry responsibility for that? And, where does an organization running a platform business like yours, where does that obligation kind of start and end?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think it really starts with our social license to actually operate the platform. Like we're in a position that we get to, serve so many different stakeholders around this sort of stuff that I think it's part of our social license to play is to do the advocacy work with the industry, and that was a big part of working as part of the the Scam Awareness Week with the ACCC around doing a white paper focusing in on the property scam side of things, because we've seen it. We see it day to day around anecdotally working in with a lot of our conveyancing community and those sort of things around lived experience around that sort of stuff. So I think definitely it's the advocacy and awareness stuff is a big part of that. So trying to break it down, and the idea with the white paper was it's understanding that everyone who's working on the different parts of the chain on property buying and selling as part of the process there has different roles to play and brings different parts to it. So I was trying to expose that up. There's conveyancers that work with their customers and those sort of things. The customers themselves around taking a bit of time around how do they need to think about and it's not just in within buying and selling property. It's some of just the basic good practices around stop and think, and when you're doing payment details, confirmation of payee. So it was bringing that all together around in trying to once again tell a story and work with various industry stakeholders. I was lucky enough to do a really good webinar as part of that with quite a few different members in the wider ecosystem that were all able to bring it to life and talk about some of those experiences, whether it's over in Western Australia around what are they seeing from some of the a lot of scamming and business email compromise type things, bring that to life and trying to spend the time with those people to just keep reinforcing those sort of things. But then I see it also then leads into part of what can we be doing, bring it back around to some of those technical controls around some of the how can we actually be helping, not so much from a but a security perspective, but it's that finding the balance of security in there, that the friction that it adds into the experience, having complex passwords is complex and hard to remember and all those sort of things. So, what can we be doing around passwordless and some of those growths around trying to drive some of those experiential things from our customers? How can we help improve some of those elements there? So trying to bring a lot of that together around, I think, that really good user experience that's secure, trying to drive that as well. So playing that advisory and advocacy sort of role in that is an important one as well.
It's creating a real sense of shared accountability, because I think for a consumer to lose an amount of money like that, right? You don't want to, you're probably not going to want to blame yourself for clicking on a phishing email or having a poor password or, it must have been this PEXA thing, right? What I like from your white paper is you're not really sort of shying away from the social license, as you said. I think it's a really, really good way to frame it, to be like, absolutely, we have a role to play in educating people. We do not shirk our responsibility. And if I've said it in my own job, right? If I've had a student at the university fall victim to a scam and they've lost money or something like that, right? I don't go, well, you clicked on it, you did it, rah. It's actually, do you know what? And I've said this to my team, we failed to educate them properly and to equip them to be able to identify that risk and to be able to manage it. Yeah,
and it's definitely, when we talk about business email compromises and those sort of things, it's being amplified, every day. The use of AI has really, upped the quality and those sort of things. So it's becoming, challenging to detect. So it's then, trying to coach some of that stop and think elements, around, is it normal that my conveyancer would be sending me these sort of things? And that's some of the practices that we were talking about is, what's some of the things that we can be doing to, in some of those onboarding conversations, set some ground rules and those sort of things. So they're simple principles and they're not, it's not really exotic security, really, heavy tech stuff, but it's set some base principles in place. Like I will never send you an email asking for your bank details and I'll always call you you, those sort of things. So build some of those things up front, I think are really, simple ways that, aren't heavy or require a lot of tech, to drive some of those outcomes.
And there's the storyteller again, hey? I think to finish this off today, as someone who has, as I said, risen to the CISO role through the ranks, working at a university, I get a lot of people asking me like, hey, how did you land in your role? And I think it's always good to ask, especially new CISOs like yourself. 18 months, not that new anymore. But what advice have you got out there for people who are thinking that, hey, maybe this is a job that I want to get to one day?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because I think I've had it's been a reasonly diverse career to this point.
It really has.
Across technology and even before that, coming from outside of technology originally. It comes back to a lot of it is, showing interest in what you're doing and putting your hand up. I think, showing that you're genuinely interested in doing a role, doing stuff, shows a level of, that you're wanting to, contribute to an organisation and those sort of things, starts to build a lot of those sort of things. There's a lot to be said around, trying to do a few different things and pick up a few different skills. I mean, you've worked in quite a few different roles and, service desk and then into operational roles and sort of led there and then project management, those sort of things. It's a lot of different skills. You'll be surprised where, something you've learned, for me 10, 15 years ago. Let's go a little bit, we'll cap it at that.
All right. Don't want to give too much away.
Yeah, that's right. Where, some of those learnings and those opportunities, really, come to the fore around, telling a story or building a relationship with people and those sort of things. But it's definitely you let people know what are your goals. That's a big one. I know you and I definitely had lots of conversations around what's the path around and what are the opportunities and those sort of things. And it isn't necessarily always a straight line, on those sort of things. And life also comes along, but it's taking the most of those opportunities. And I think you'll find that if you share with people, where do you want to go or what do you want to try and those sort of things, a lot of people will get on board and help you and give some really good advice. Or, I've got lots of people that I'm still really good friends with that have been great mentors to me and gave me some amazing, incredible opportunities and those sort of things and across the career journey. So I think it's, first of all, share it with people and, that this is where I'd like to go. And most people will be pretty candid around, here's what I think you build up some, some capabilities in this space. I don't think there is any one, to your point, there's any one, here's the CV for a CISO, because it depends on the organisation of what you're doing, what's your experience, some particularly as you start, get into some of those SOCI areas that, some of those are quite nuanced and, come with a lot of learnings. So, there's always opportunities to bring different experiences and bring them to the fore in a role around that.
Yeah, and as I was listening to you talk, I was thinking of what a great example or a way of articulating that it is because, there is, as you say, there is no template. I mean, there is a PD with key roles and functions, but I think, you take you and I, for example, two people who have held the same role at the same company and both brought our own unique flavour to it because of our different set of experiences. I think people should, you're exactly right. If you're looking to move into a specific role, try and do some of the work at that role. I can remember when I reported to a CISO, I tried my best to put my hand up and be delegated to and do some of their work and show that you can do it. I mean, you and I were tag teaming a lot back in the day. Like if I went on, I knew I could go on leave and you could present a paper to the exec and, learn some of those skills.
Exactly, yeah.
A big diversity of experience, I think, is what will make a successful CISO.
Exactly. And I think, for any, sort of whether it's, CISO role or any sort of roles in the industry and all those sort of things. Starting the conversation, on that sort of thing. So I'm always, I really enjoy that mentoring side of working with a few people in the business around what's the journey into, whether it's into security as itself, or doing that career and the coaching and development side of things is I really enjoy that. It gives you a good kick for myself, for sure.
Well, there you have it, everyone. So Graham Fairley, if you've not heard of him yet before, he's definitely a leader to watch who is just going to continue to do amazing things within our community. Graham, it's been great to talk to you and catch up a bit about how things have been in the last 18 months. Best of luck as you continue. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your voice with us today.
No, thanks for having us, Dave. It's been a really great opportunity. So, thanks once again.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Cyber Voices. Our music is by Sanar Garut, our show artwork is by Studio Quarantine, and we record our show at This Is a Studio in Prahran, Melbourne, part of Poplant Productions. Please make sure you follow the show on your podcast platform of choice and leave us a 5-star review. This will help others find the show. Also, please follow the association on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you want to add your voice to our ever-growing chorus of diverse cyber voices, have questions, feedback, or would like to be a sponsor, you can do so by emailing us at cybervoices@aisa.org.au. That's cybervoices@aisa.org.au. Are you an AISA member? If not, you should consider joining our network of over 12,000 members across Australia. An AISA membership can open doors, build professional networks, create lifetime friendships, and offer exclusive training, events, and other perks. Become a member today by heading to our website at aisa.org.au. That is all for today. I hope you will join us again next time on Cyber Voices.